Sunday in February in praise and worship of our God. So that's kind of amazing in case you're in the mood for March Madness. Um, so good to see you all. We have announcements. So next Sunday, of course, is the rescheduled annual meeting, as well as our celebration of Mardi Gras, the whole Fat Tuesday, get ready for Lent experience. And so we need one more. Well, actually, I think you said that you had an extra pancake griddle. I'm wondering if anybody would like to be a pancake flipper. And by that, I mean the person who turns, we have the batter, gluten-free and regular, but we need, assuming that I won't make it back to the kitchen in a timely fashion, would anybody like to flip pancakes?
I can try.
Yeah.
I'm much better at French toast. Know that I could help, but I didn't have a grip.
Oh, great.
That's perfect.
So
There's
griddle.
people here, do we need to be here early or do you need like?
I'm thinking it's gonna be, just like when we do a potluck, other than, that I'll make sure that the batters are like in the refrigerator, ready to go. I don't even think they need to be refrigerated, but nonetheless, ready.
They don't need to be refrigerated.
Okay, then, and ready to go. And, just to make it, a fun, casual way of, just getting ready for the annual meeting. So if anybody wants to bring some sausages or bacon, they'd be welcome. If somebody else says, hey, I know a much better way to eat fat and sugar, they'd be welcome to do so. I certainly am not encouraging people that they have to give up fat and sugar. That comes out of the Middle Ages. And so we're going to play a little bit of Lenten Jeopardy during our eating, just for fun, to think about how some of these and so anyway, volunteering and being a part of that and all the good things. On Saturday, March 1st, and I like to make these announcements just so that we're to remember that we're connected to larger groups. On Saturday is the spring meeting for the Southwest Association at McFarland UCC. And what we're talking about is we are, the proposal on the table is to disband the associations and just go with a conference. That we had associations back in the 60s when we had more churches. So now, and the Presbyterians are doing the exact same thing. And so Lisa, who some of us have known, she's been here to preach, she's been here to be helpful. She was a transitional minister as they try to reformat who they are. She has taken a new position and is going back to Pennsylvania, or she's from the East, going back east, and is going to be a pastor. So this is what churches are doing. But anyway, if anybody's interested, you're welcome to come to the meeting next Saturday morning in McFarland UCC. Just let me know so I can order you a box lunch. So if you want to do that. All righty. And then on March 9th, we'll do the imposition of ashes and we'll celebrate the beginning of Lent. And then the Palestine-Israel Working Group of the Wisconsin Conference wants to come and do a presentation and just, help us understand the experience a little better. We had agreed on March 30th, and then they called back and said, well, we might have a better day earlier. So they're going to let me know tomorrow, but one of the remaining 3 Sundays in March, we'll have a faith forum, just looking at the Palestine-Israel context and learning from people who've been there and done a lot of talking with the pastors in the area. So I think that'll be fascinating. So now that I've got all my announcements done, are there any other announcements that you all have to share?
Annual meeting I have a loud voice. Annual meeting, we have the annual report is out back by the bulletins. I will forewarn you, in there is the updated membership log that has now been corrected. I had failed to put in the names of people that had joined the church this year, so our numbers look weird. So now the numbers are all fixed, it's all accurate, so there's also a corrected membership log plus the annual report, if you are interested in seeing that. And then, which I'm sure you all are.
Riveting.
Riveting. Also, there's proxy forms out there if you know that you are unable to be at the annual meeting. Please fill one of those out and we will get Vicki to sign it when you have that ready for us. Next Sunday, yes. Absolutely.
So for those of you who look at the log of Fort Atkins, you're gonna see that the church is listed, that the fire department came here yesterday. So the reason why they came is because the carbon monoxide detectors were going, Roxanne was here cleaning. And Roxanne notified Chris, who notified me, we called the fire department, came out here, checked. Those detectors, if you read on them, the alarm is good for 10 years. Regardless of how often you replace the batteries, they actually come with batteries that are good for 10 years, but they were all 10 years old. So the fire department told us that we should replace them. But the good news is we had 5 of them in this building, and you typically need 1 per level of your structure. So we had more than we needed. So we're replacing them with 2 because we have 2 furnaces for this building and we keep that door shut a lot. So we'll have 1 in this area and 1 in the back area. So we will be perfectly fine. I got them yesterday, so it's all good. But I just didn't want you to be alarmed if you saw it on the log about why the fire department was here.
And after Tony is done lighting the candles, I'm gonna go see if I can silence the one that's chirping right now.
I missed one.
I can hear it chirping now, but
Oh, it might have been the one I replaced. Okay,
Yeah.
well, we'll figure it.
Someone, yeah.
exciting.
It's nice to know that they were.
Yeah. All right, very good. Well, those are our announcements. As we get ready for worship, we join together in reminding ourselves of our O&A covenant. Grace United Church of Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin welcomes and affirms all who join us on the journey of faith. We receive with respect, nurture with intention, and celebrate with joy the gifts of a diverse congregation. We celebrate all of God's people, regardless of age, race, gender, economic circumstances, physical or mental challenges, sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression, and family configurations. We seek to be an agent of healing and reconciliation for all people. We invite all to join us in the life and leadership of every aspect of our church's work and our ongoing commitment as an open and affirming congregation. So let us then center our hearts and minds for worship during the playing of the prelude. Join me in the call to worship. Do not be afraid of those who do wrong, for they will fade like the grass. God knows our desires and wants for us days filled with joy. Let us worship our loving God in patience and in hope. Let us join together in our opening prayer. Loving God, tell us to not when we think of those who repent of you or others. Where is the justice? You assure us that you are with us, that our joy is your desire, and that justice is the way. With gladness, we remember reconciliation between Joseph and his brothers who sold the land. When one another listen, as Jesus tells us to forgive our enemies. May we trust always in the kindness of your love. Amen. And let us stand together and join in this hymn. You are the salt of the earth, O people, number 181 in the New Century Hymnal. Are you going to play it first, do you think? Okay, just to be sure you all know it. But those who are able, please rise. Be seated. And I see we are so lucky that Suzanne brought her granddaughters with her today. If you two would be willing to come and help me with something real quick. Oh, that's great. Well, come on up. All right. And I knew this once. What is your name?
Brittany,
And your name?
Ada,
And you guys are how old?
Yeah.
So you're in what grade? Third grade. All right. Are there any rules for third grade? Like if you go and sit in your classroom on the first day of class, what does your teacher say? The rules are. Everybody has to come to the pulpit?
Colbert,
Oh, to the carpet because that's where you do your gathering time, right? Okay, so everybody comes to the carpet so they can be together. And then are there any more rules?
switch.
Okay, okay. What about rules like lining up? Are there rules about lining up? What are the rules for about lining up? No budging. That's a good one. We tell that to our dog all the time because she is forever budging, but she doesn't listen to us. All right, so come to the carpet, no budging. What else? Oh, that's a good one. No pushing and shoving. No pushing and shoving, okay? Well, I think those are good rules. Let's see. How about you can't go out to the playground until the teacher says you can? Do you have that rule?
Mhm.
Okay, all righty.
Can you talk out of turn?
Raise your hand.
Okay. Do some kids cheat and they like talk out of turn and then the teacher says, raise your hand? Okay, so they have to be reminded of that, don't they? Do you think these rules are a good idea?
Yes.
Yes. And why is that?
Mm. You have to go to the principal's office.
If you don't follow them, you have to go to the principal's office. Yeah. Yeah, well, so that's kind of another rule too. Well, today we're talking about Jesus. And Jesus had some rules about how he thought people should live. And one of his rules was forgive your enemy or love your enemies. I know. Don't you think that's a hard one? Love your enemies. Well, do you guys have any advice on how to do that? Just be kind. Yeah, just be kind. Well, what Jesus said is even if you don't like somebody, you can pray for them. And that might help. Let's see. Jesus also said, be fair. Do you think that's a good rule? Do you guys ever get snacks in school? Now, do you take your own or does somebody bring them?
Well, if you- the teacher-
Okay. So if the teacher has some extras for people who forgot some, that feels fair, doesn't it? Because then everybody gets some. So I think that's really good. And then, so Jesus said, love your enemies. Jesus said, be fair. And then Jesus said something that's even more fun. He said, be a light. Now, what does it mean to be a light? Shine bright. It's kind of on the same thing with what you said earlier about showing kindness. That's a way of just being a light. So you guys have been very helpful today in helping us get ready for our Bible story. And I'm very glad for that. Let's say a prayer together. Holy One, we thank you for the leaders, the teachers, the prophets, and Jesus who tell us the importance of using rules and guides so that we can treat each other better, especially when we're tempted not to. May your spirit be within all of us so that we are lights for the world. Well, thank you guys. You can go back and sit now. And they helped Grandma Suzanne make a gluten-free apple cake for coffee hour.
Wow.
So
Talk about being kind.
yeah, I know. They're doing great today. All right.
And our scripture for today comes from Luke 6:27 through 38. But I say to you who are listening, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. And from anyone who takes away your coat, do not withhold even your shirt. Give to everyone who asks of you. And if anyone takes away what is yours, do not ask for it back again. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do the same. If you lend to those from whom you expect to receive payment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to receive as much again. Instead, love your enemies, do good, and lend, expecting nothing in return. Your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, for he himself is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For the measure you give will be the measure you get back.
So how familiar were you with our gathering hymn the one that we just sang? Not very, okay. Well, I hope you liked it, and I hope we get to sing it again, and maybe with familiarity, it will be even become one of your favorites. Last week and then this week, I said that we were focused on the Beatitudes, which are from the Sermon on the Plain in Luke and the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew. And this hymn is based on the Sermon on the Mount from Matthew, but it works for Luke's version of the same sermon, I think. The hymn writer, Marty Hogan, is one of the most influential and prolific of contemporary church musicians. He is a member of the United Church of Christ, but his first big church job as a musician was in a Roman Catholic church because they have more money. And they can afford full-time musicians, and that's what he wanted. But he went to, his job with great hope and aspirations, and discovered that the music in the church was dry and uninspiring. He just couldn't find any music that really lifted his spirits. So he decided to write his own. And that's how something new happens sometimes. When someone tries something to see if it is a better fit, and in this example, it is, and the church takes a breath of fresh air. And so now Marty has written over 400 hymns, and they are in the hymnals of the Lutherans, the Catholics, the Methodists, the Presbyterians, and of course, the United Church of Christ. And he's traveled all over the world leading music workshops for churches. And the song that we just sang, Bring Forth the Kingdom, is one of his most popular, and it summarizes what he hears in the Beatitude in Jesus' sermon. Bring forth the kingdom of mercy, bring forth the kingdom of justice, bring forth the kingdom of peace, and bring forth the city of God. Jesus said these are the attributes of community. And they are healing words to hear in a chaotic world. Jesus breaks down the way of community, how to be community together, and gives us examples to think about. Love your enemies, he said. Pray for them. But that doesn't mean you have to accept unjust behavior. So over 40 years ago, the late theologian and Bible scholar Walter Wink provided a historical context for the verse about turning your cheek and the verse about giving your shirt with your coat. So Walter Wink said that during Jesus's time, a slave owner or a master of a servant was allowed to backhand a slave or a servant. But if the slave or the servant turned their cheek, the slave owner or the master would have to hit them open-handed, which was an act done only with equals. So it stopped the master from further violence. And in the same way, if you owed a money lender for your coat and they came for your money and you didn't have it, then they would, take your coat. Jesus says, well, offer your shirt as well, for then your nakedness would be the responsibility of the money lender. And this perspective was not intended to shame the enemy. It was an opportunity for the slave owner or the money lender to know that they were participating in an unjust system. So this guidance by Jesus was loving and redemptive, because even the slave owner suffers in an unjust system. That was one of the refrains heard during the time of concerns about slavery. When Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King spoke out against racism, he held up a mirror to the nation and he said, do we want to be a nation where Black people are treated differently than white? Is that what our founders intended when they wrote the Constitution? So he asked this question to the nation in various ways. He tested the waters, and when hate was the response, he knew that it was time for the nation to struggle with the issue of racism and to help the country change for the soul of the nation. So not just for justice for Black people, but because an unjust system is unjust for both. Now, both Jesus and Gandhi helped Dr. King to see how nonviolent civil action was a loving way to create change. In a situation of conflict, doing nothing keeps the conflict alive. But getting angry and yelling, well, that's just destructive. So for King, nonviolent direct action was the most creative engagement with the nation. The goal was justice and peace. A third way between doing nothing and going ballistic. Nonviolent actions, such as what King embodied and what he taught his followers, was to set people free from a cycle of perpetual unkindness. It is a way of communicating with those who refuse to engage in reconciling dialogue. And to march with Dr. King, to participate with him in one of his protests, took months of training. One had to be so spiritually centered that if the police came, as they were bound to, and they began beating on the individuals participating in a sit-in, for example, one would not strike back. So people were taught to be spiritually centered and to control their actions so that they would not change the dynamic of what was going on. Because the story, as Dr. King led people, was, for example, 50 Black Americans sat in a diner in protest of segregation and were beaten by the police. But if anybody had hit back out of anger, fear, frustration, the story would have been an angry mob of protesters infiltrated the diner. So Dr. King was very careful about how he went about doing his protests. Jesus said, protest unjust practices for the benefit of both parties, but do so in creative and peaceful ways. Participate with love in your heart. And then Jesus lifted up the value of forgiveness. That's another hard one. In our criminal justice system, if someone commits a crime, they pay for that crime through incarceration. But that does nothing to help the victim. Restorative justice works to change that. And in the Forgiveness Project, Joan tells the story of her 28-year-old son, James, who was killed with a single punch to the head. So James, her son, had been out celebrating with his father, brother, and 3 friends following a soccer match. And they ran into a group of young men who had had too much to drink, and punches were thrown, including the fatal one to her son, James. So Jacob, the young man who hit James, only received a sentence of 4 years in prison, for which he served 13 months, and then he was given early release. And Joan didn't know how she was going to live with that, not only the death of her son, but what she felt was very unfair, too short of a sentence and not enough justice for anyone. But a court liaison told her about restorative justice and said that if she wanted to, she could meet Jacob. And she thought she might want to, because it would at least answer some questions she had. And it took years of working with the program before she was ready to meet Jacob. And it took Jacob years after he also agreed to meet with Joan before he was ready. So they both had a lot of internal work they had to do, meeting with the program and talking about what it meant before they were ready. And when they met, Joan said she discovered that Jacob was a person. He was not a horrible monster. He was a person, and he had made a devastating mistake. But by meeting him, she was able to find forgiveness, which for her meant peace and letting go of the bitterness and finding hope again. And then after they met, Jacob, who had been able to stay out of prison but had not found his way, found his way. He was able to pull himself together, go to college, and now he speaks. And there's a play called A Single Punch. Loving our enemies, changing unjust systems, offering forgiveness as a way of life. Jesus said that as much as we practice these, our relationships will benefit. For the measure that we give will be the measure that we give back. Well, where are we as a community? It might seem like changing unjust social systems is too big of a task for us, but yet there are steps that we can take in that direction, such as when we became ONA. That is a step. And when we each look at our own lives and decide if there are places where forgiveness needs to be offered and forgiveness needs to be received, whether there are places that we can work on fair practices. It's an interesting question, and I think it takes an amount of safety for a congregation to know if they could even have these kinds of questions. But Jesus said, the measure that we give is the measure that we give back. Meaning if we are daring enough, brave enough, trust enough to engage in this work that Jesus has given us, well, it comes back to us. By throwing our whole selves in, we do become the light of the world, as it says in Matthew, and the salt of the earth, and it is how we create the city of God. So may God guide us forward in the work that we choose to do. Our next hymn is another one by a contemporary hymn writer, We Offer Christ. And this is, to me, exactly what Jesus is talking about. We come to a time of prayer where we offer the prayers of our hearts. We share them with each other as a way of amplifying and sharing with God. Does anybody have a prayer request or a celebration they would like to share this morning? Yes.
Well, my sister Nan is going to embark on a European cruise at the end of the week for 10 days.
Oh, how fun!
Yeah, safe travels for Nan and her friends. Say, go far.
All right. Well, Nan and off on a cruise, and we celebrate that and are happy to pray of that. Yes, Roxanne.
My cousin or step cousin Toby, he did pass away on the 13th. So prayers for his grieving family. And then I received a message from a good friend of mine who has melanoma of the retina. So she goes through surgery tomorrow. They did radiation once on the eye, and tomorrow they're doing surgery. I'm not exactly sure what the surgery is going to consist of, but.
So what's her name?
Holly.
Holly. So prayers for Holly as she has eye surgery and,
That it has not gone anywhere.
pardon?
Praying that there's.
Right.
It hasn't messed us up anywhere else. She's a mom of 2 boys in junior high and high school.
Yep. So, yeah, she's got lots of life left to
She
go.
is a very vibrant person.
All right. Well, sorry for the loss of Toby, but certainly prayers for the family of Toby and Holly as she goes through her eye surgery and hopes for a good recovery. Yes, Rich.
Celebration. It's Terry's birthday today.
No, we should have sang it. All righty. In fact, because you didn't say anything, I don't think, when we celebrated February birthdays.
Yes, I did.
Oh, did you?
Yep.
All right. Well,
Because it was
nonetheless,
Mara and I both share February birthday.
okay, all right. Well, happy birthday. And,
Thank you.
yes, celebrating prayers. Are there others? Yes.
If I could just lift up my friend Beth.
Oh. Said the loss of her mother
Yes, thank you.
and all of those who loved her mother. Yes.
My granddaughter Trinity will be getting married Friday. Blessings for her for a long and happy marriage.
Oh, how fun. And Trinity?
Yeah.
All right, Trinity's wedding. Are there any others? It is wonderful to see that we have such prayers of celebration today, because it is a chaotic world that we live in, and it's so easy to focus on our needs, and so to also have prayers of celebration is truly wonderful. All right. Let us then begin with a time of quiet prayer. Gracious and loving God, we come to you with hearts that need to be open to your word and your love. There is much around us that tears at us and causes us to tremble. But the words of Jesus teach us how we are to treat each other and that it matters if we treat each other well. Because if we build community, we have something strong to lean on during the tough times. For the injustice in this world, help us to be creative in thinking about how we might bring our energy and our solutions to the problems. Fill our hearts with love even for our enemies. And when we struggle to share the good news, keep us focused on the mission and the ministry you have called us to. Help us to jump into life with both feet, giving it all we have for the good of all. This week, we offer prayers of celebration for Nan as she begins her, or is soon to begin her European cruise, for Terry on her birthday, for Trinity and her soon-to-be husband, who are embarking on an amazing journey of love together. And we ask that your prayers of strength and comfort be with the family of Toby, with Holly, who is having eye surgery, and with Beth, who has who has lost her mother, and all of those who have loved her mother as well. As we discern daily what it means to be in relationship with you, hear us as we pray the prayer of Jesus. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. Do not let us fall into temptation, and deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. We come to a time of giving where we share out of our resources. We are mindful that it is not just our wealth that God needs from us, but our very, the gifts that are inherent to who we are. So let us stand and join together in the offertory, in the doxology. Before we join in our offertory prayer, did somebody go turn on the coffee?
I did.
Oh, yes, thank you, thank you. I did not even see that. All right. Now let us join together in our offertory prayer. God, your mercy is limitless. We are grateful for your constant love and compassion. We offer gifts in response that others may hear the teaching of Jesus and feel influenced to spread the gospel message. All right, we are marching in the light of God. Do you remember this? Pam? No? All right, well, Harriet's going to play it one time through, and then we have, not all four verses, 3, 1, 2, 3, are in the hymnal, but once you get it, it's pretty simple. 1, 2.
Yep.
Yeah. Jesus calls us to follow him, to love our enemies, to be merciful, to offer forgiveness, to work together for the city of God. Let us live into our higher calling in Jesus Christ. Go with his blessing. Amen.
Amen.
And let us gather together and make our gathering fruitful. Gonna come with me?